Hi everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by again. And I know so many of you have come over from Will's video, and I just want to take a moment to say thank you very much for subscribing and trusting me with teaching you how to cook, or at least teaching you how to cook for longevity. So thank you. It absolutely warms my heart that so many people have taken an interest in this, and I am beyond excited to share it with you. So let's get started. So today we're going to make some bone broth. We're going to make two types of bone broth. We're going to make one that's called, like a more savory bone broth, which is used to make more savory foods, typically, obviously soups, but you can use it in gravies and other ways. So I'll show you some ways to save it frozen in your freezer so you can use it portion sizes for different things. And then we're going to make what's called a sweet bone broth, and it's not necessarily sweet, but it is used to make the sweeter drinks that, like the greens latte that I make every morning. You can also use it in a kind of like a faux hot chocolate. So we'll do another video on that and in a future date, but right now I'm going to show you how to make this broth. This broth is lovely. Both of them are lovely just to sip on their own, and they are very, very healthy for you. And we'll get into that, but let's just kind of go back to when we were like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, at least me, when I was in the play yard, digging holes and mixing them with mud and water and greens and, grass and, taking a stick and mixing it up, and sort of like my inner witch, making my witch's brew is kind of how I feel when I'm making bone broth, because it's really just this like discarded vegetables, discarded bones, and makes something that's actually uniquely tasty and really healthy for you. So what is bone, why is it healthy? Bone broth is a really good, it's full of collagen, but it's also got the amino acids that are great collagen builders. So proline is one of those collagen building amino acids that's abundant in bone broth. So really wonderful, good for, obviously your skin, your joints, but what we don't think about is kind of like our cardiovascular health. We need it for that. So that's one. And then the other amino acid that I get really excited about in bone broth is glycine. Glycine is like the key component, one of the key builders for glutathione in the body. So your body makes glutathione, which is like the master antioxidant that helps you detoxify on a daily basis. You need both glycine and cystine. And cystine you can get in acetylcysteine as a supplement, and you will see that. However, you can also just eat healthy pastured meats are high in cystine, particularly pork. I will put a link in the show notes about these two amino acids and where the higher sources of cystine, so that you have that. But you need the you need the glycine, you need the cystine, and that's going to build that glutathione. And that glutathione will really help your body detoxify. Let me just to stress the importance of it. The doctor that I used to see for my heavy metal detoxification, she had a lot of children in her clinic, and she would never give them a chelator to detoxify those heavy metals that they may have because it's very dangerous for kids to have a chelator. But she would push glutathione in an IV, which would then help their bodies detoxify from the heavy metals or pesticides or the various toxins they may have. So that is how powerful glutathione is. The tricky bit about glutathione is, yes, you can buy it as a supplement, but to my knowledge and into the research I've done, most supplements do not significantly raise your own body's level of glutathione, nor do they provide much benefit. It's at least, again, what I've seen, the ones that I see that have some clinical research and some, that do seem to work, they're so economically prohibitive. And especially when I think of the price of bone broth and just eating healthy food, it's like a win-win. I've got healthy food that, is going to build my own glutathione. So it's kind of one of those grow your own type of ideas. You want to provide the building blocks for that glutathione. And glutathione is something like, I know a lot of women will go in for glutathione injections just to help their skin glow, because it does really help your skin glow. But so the glycine in this will really be helpful for those things, but also just be thinking connective tissues. And I'm sure there is a whole host of things in bone broth that we just don't even know like why it's so good for us, because we just can't measure it yet. But just think, this is something that we've been using sort of in a medicinal sense for thousands of years. So it's kind of cool to think about that it does still work, and it works well enough that clinicians have studied it. So let's get going. Let's make the savory first, and I'll get a close-up of these things here. But what I have is my leftover, this is actually only half of my leftover turkey carcass, and it's about 2.5 pounds of bones here with some meats hanging on it. And then I have some carrots. I didn't have any left over, so I just bought some carrots. But the other fun thing, like I chop up fennel, and so I just take the tops of the fennel and I'm going to put that in the bone broth. So like I said, like you can kind of experiment with this. Same thing, bone broth always calls for celery, but instead of pulling out another celery stick, every time I chop celery on the weekends, the stuff that, like you typically may or may not want to eat, I just stick it in a bag in the freezer, and then when it's time to make bone broth, I pop it all in there. One of the things you won't see typically on recipes for bone broth, but I love to do, I save, not all my egg, but when I'm making eggs in the morning, I just save the eggshells, and you put that in your bone broth, and that'll increase the calcium content in your bone broth. So yay. And then another thing I do more for flavor than calcium, but this is kind of the Italian grandma trick. You take this is a Parmesan rind that I've done with, so I'm going to put that in this bone broth, and it gives it a salty sort of je ne sais quoi flavor. It really adds like a nice punch. So when you're throwing stuff out, kind of think, is that something I could put in my bone broth? And if you can, just keep these little bags in the freezer. I try not to do too many plastics in my kitchen, but this is one of the places I do because it's just fits in the freezer a lot more easily. So that's how we're going to make that. We're going to also use, obviously some salt. I've got Himalayan sea salt. We're going to use an onion, the bay leaf, and I'll have to do an episode on bay leaf because it's always a surprise to me. Like, it doesn't smell much, but does it impart something to the flavor? And I do think it does. We're going to use also some peppercorns, and we're going to use some garlic, but we're going to throw the garlic in towards the end. So bone broth, we're going to make it 2 separate ways. We're going to do the savory one on the stove, which is actually going to take 24 hours. And no, you're not going to be in my kitchen for 24 hours. We'll use the magic of, video, and we'll fast forward to that. But the other fun ingredient that we are going to put in each one of these bone broths is chicken feet. Gobble, gobble. So, it's kind of creepy, but it's also kind of like witchy. These in part will help add a ton more collagen to the broth. So you don't have to have the chicken feet. And if it freaks you out, then, I get it. But I just got these through my farmer, but I have seen them at Whole Foods, or just ask any butcher, for that, which actually brings up a good point. One of the things that I'm pretty adamant about is always, getting healthy animals, not only because it's healthier for me, but it's just, it's better for the animal to have a happy life, So these are girls that, I get pictures of on a weekly basis, like, oh, these are the girls out on the pasture, doing their thing. And then when their time has come, their time has come. But then I also know that there's not a bunch of junk in my bone broth. So for instance, like this sweet bone broth, we're going to be using cow bones. And I'm sure you've probably seen those videos where there's the cows kind of walking around in their own filth in the, we call them cow-intration camps. I just can't imagine that bone broth would be very healthy for you. Like anything that's unhealthy in that cow is going to kind of get concentrated in your bone broth. So if that cow has, lead poisoning in its bones, it wouldn't matter how much, glycine that has. I can't imagine that it would be healthy for you. And let's face it, it's just not healthy or fair to the animals. So, spend the extra whatever. I can't imagine it's that much ever. I stopped running the calculation a long time ago because it really used to just be like, maybe it was like an extra few $100s a year, which, spread over the course of the year, I would have rather spend that money on my health and know the animal is healthy than, trying to save a few. So just be thinking, like when you're going to concentrate something like this, that you could actually be creating a problem for yourself if you don't have the healthy animals. So that's what we're going to do with the savory. And then the sweet bone broth, like I said, is going to be and I'll get those out in a bit. We're going to get the bones from beef, and then there's several spices here, and I'll get a close-up for you and kind of share with you what I'm doing. And then the key for both of these is going to be, you need like an acidic environment to pull those nutrients out of the bones, and this is vinegar. So we're going to use about 2 tablespoons of vinegar in each of them. I will have the recipe below, or rather the guidelines, so you know kind of how much bones to how much water, and how much vinegar, and you know the spices. I'll put those things, but this is the ultimate in, like, you've got a lot of leeway to make some mistakes. Don't ever really try to, this is definitely is not baking. This is like experimentation and creating a witch's brew. So if you think something might be good in there, you know, add it and see what happens. Okay, so let's get started. First, let's make our savory broth. Okay, so here we go. So we're just going to chop up our onion, and guess what? Fun thing, you don't even need to peel this guy. This is so great. We're just gonna cut it in quarters, and we're gonna throw it in our stock pot. That's it. Like, that's how simple this is. Actually, I'm gonna throw in the bones first and then wiggle this stuff all around. So I've got my huge stock pot. I've got my huge turkey carcass, which, like I said, it's been previously, like I froze it after Thanksgiving. You just kind of, you know, we're just gonna kind of throw these in here. I mean, it is like a witch's brew. It's so fun. Yeah, like I said, your inner 5-year-old will come out. There's that. Let's see if you can see that. And then we're gonna put the onions in here. Oh, it's like, this is how freaking simple this is. Onions. I'm gonna cut the carrot. Just, you know, I didn't peel it. I did wash these things, but you know, nothing major. We're just gonna throw those in there. I've never done this before, so this is going to be a fun part of my experiment. This is just the tops of the fennel that I had left over, and I thought, why not? Let's see what happens if I put them in there. So if you have something like that, I would give it a go. I'm just going to do one of the rinds, not all of them, and I am going to do all of the eggshells. So, you know, some or any eggshells will add a considerable amount of calcium, which is kind of cool. So it's like free, I don't know, maybe it's like being a freegan. You guys know about freegans? Freegans are people that dumpster dive. So, anyway, okay, that was a Portland thing. So I'm just gonna do what seems like maybe 2 stalks of celery. Again, this definitely is not rocket science. This is, you know, witch's coven science. So we're just gonna throw a bunch in, and that works for me. The rest will go in the freezer for the next batch. So that is that. Then I am going to put 2 chicken feet in here. Like, it's so creepy, right? Like, ooh, anyway, sorry. Thank you, little chicken. I'm gonna only put 2 tablespoons, so half of this is gonna go in here. Again, you could do a little more, probably not a little less. Now, the garlic, you can put these in right away. You don't have to peel them either. You can just throw them in. But there's some schools of thought that it makes it a little too bitter. Honestly, I have never noticed. If I were going to do it in the Instant Pot and pressure cook it really quickly, I would definitely throw the garlic in. But most people recommend that you just do this for the last few hours of the brew. So I'm going to wait, because this is going to actually go on my stove for a whole day, 24 hours. So I'm going to do some peppercorns. I'm going to do, this is 2 teaspoons of salt, so I'm going to throw that in. And then the bay leaves. And I'm going to cover this with water, and we're going to bring it to a boil. So let's give that a go. So this is almost finished filling up. What we want to do is make sure the bones are completely submerged in the water. So I may have to kind of push those down a little bit, but without having, you know, the pot filled completely, because if I do fill it completely, it'll bubble over and make a huge mess. So we're going to push those bones down. Turn this off. So I've got about an inch left at the top, and I'll just kind of push these bones to make sure that they completely submerge. Might have to break them. Yeah, so we just want all this to stay submerged. Okay, so I'm going to wash my hands, and we're going to put this on the stove. Okay, so while this is, we're going to bring this to a boil. Let's see, I'm going to put it on high, and we're going to bring it to a boil. And once it's boiling, it's going to produce a bunch of foam, and we're going to skim that off. You don't have to skim off the foam. It's not bad for you. It's just more of a flavor issue. So that's what we're going to be doing. While we're waiting for this to boil, I'm going to get started on the sweet bone broth. So let's go back over to the other station and you'll get to see us make the sweet bone broth. Okay, so now we're going to make our sweet bone broth. Now here we're going to have, I have 2 apples. I just happen to have one kind of, you know, this is the time to use those old mealy apples that maybe have been sitting in the back of the fridge or the back of your basement for a little too long and probably don't want to eat them. They're perfectly fine for making stock. I didn't have 2 of them, so I just went and bought another one. 2 different apples. Hey, it's a big experiment. Let's see what happens. I doubt it'll make a big difference. But and then the traditional recipe in the Healing Broths book talks about just using the orange peel, and maybe I'm just too lazy, but I just cut up the orange and use the whole thing, put it in there. So that's what I'm doing for that. I've got my chicken feet for the extra collagen, note, the vinegar. Let's go over the spices here. I've got those around the corner. So spices, we're going to be using cinnamon. I have 3 cinnamon sticks here, a whole nutmeg, so that's fun. If you don't have a whole nutmeg, you can just use nutmeg powder. Again, this recipe, I think because there's copyright issues and I really respect other cookbook writers, I don't really want to be copying and pasting their recipes. So please, refer to the recipe in that book, but you can kind of see on this video how I'm making it if you don't want to purchase the book, but please do. It's really good to support cooks. So at any rate, I've got 3 cinnamon sticks, a whole nutmeg. I have got a plethora of cardamom pods here. So there's probably, 12 in there. 2 teaspoons of Himalayan sea salt is going to go in there. This is 2 teaspoons of whole cloves, which smell absolutely beautiful. And I don't know if you guys remember, you guys are probably all too young that are watching this, but those of you that are older, if you remember clove cigarettes in the 80s, it takes me right back. So that's that. Sorry. And then this is these are that star anise, which I love the smell of those things. I love the smell of those things. So then I didn't have any bones. I mean, I guess I could use more turkey carcass, but I don't know. I kind of like the unroasted, something that hasn't been used in a savory way to go into this bone broth. So I typically just buy these bones, and it's all, grass. I don't know this brand, but I can get it at Sprouts for pretty affordably. And it's all grass-fed, grass-finished beef bones. And I love them because it's got the marrow, which is also very good for you, all this bone marrow in the center. And at the end, there's just this yummy marrow that you can just nosh on. It's the one type of offal. Offal is all the organs and the like the heart and the kidney and the liver and the bone marrow, and this is the one part of the offal that I absolutely love. So we're going to use all of these bones. I think this is 2 pounds, 2.2 pounds, so a kilo of bones in here. So again, ridiculously easy. We're literally just, those bones are going in the bottom. We're going to chop up the orange into quarters. So that's that. And again, you could use any bones here. I have made it with like a roast chicken bone. I didn't notice a huge difference, but I love that bone marrow. I actually kind of crave it when it comes out, and I'll show you when it's done. But the apple, oh, you know what? I shouldn't have done that so quickly. I'm a little bit weird because I'm weird about arsenic. So these apple seeds naturally have a lot of arsenic in them. Now, whether it's enough to actually be concerned about, I don't know. I don't want to be too hyper, but I just figure it's easy enough for me to cut them off and leave them out. So, that kind of just settles the debate for me. Don't be, overly concerned, but that's what I do. And I don't want to cause like a panic or anything like that. It's just somewhere in my reading, I had noticed that was one of the things that there's several plants that naturally have heavy metals in them, and apple seeds are one of them. So I may be making a mountain out of a molehill. Do your own research, okay, on that one. But I just figure, you know, I could cut it off. It's really not that big of a deal. It doesn't take that much time. So 2 full apples cut into quarters. We're gonna do all the spices in here, the cloves, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, and it really, so 2 teaspoons of salt and a plethora of cardamom, which is also a yummy, if you ever want to make something fun, take your cardamom and roll it with a rolling pin, and it brings out the flavor. And then if you make your own bread, you can do sort of a blueberry cardamom lemon bread. But anyway, that's another day. So, and then the fun chicken feet, and then I'm going to wash my hands. And the vinegar, and I'm going to fill this, again, I'm going to fill this to the max that's allowed for the Instant Pot with water. And then we're going to come and check on these things when they're done. So I will see you. This is going to take about 2 hours. The setting here, I think, is about 2 hours on the Instant Pot. Okay, so there is our beautiful broth. We're going to close up the lid in just a second. Hot tip on your Instant Pot, I didn't know this, but you're supposed to have this thing on venting while you put it on. So let's do that. I've got it on venting. Did not know that. So anyway, and then you turn it to close, okay? And then we're gonna do pressure cook on high, and it needs to be for 2 hours. So I've got normal, high, and then we're gonna do 2 hours. All right, 2 minutes and 1 second. So we will see you guys in a bit. Okay, so this is coming to a boil. So I'm just gonna kind of push some of these bones down, some of this stuff down. See all that foam? Not bad for you, but as far as flavor is concerned, a lot of people prefer, you know, if we were running Michelin star restaurants in our house, which we're not, but if we were, we would definitely just take that off. So you just, as it comes up, scoop off some of this. Some people call it the scum, but again, it is not bad for you. It's just a flavor thing, and I'm just gonna, you know, with this savory broth being for soups and things, I might as well just take it off. So that's how that's done. That, you know, there's going to be some more foam that's going to come up as this begins to boil a little more, and I'll scrape some off. Eventually it stops foaming, and so it makes a more clear broth as well. But again, you don't have to do that. But as soon as this comes to kind of like a full rolling boil, which it looks like it's almost there, I'm going to turn it down to low. And at this point, you have a couple of options. You could cover this pot and put it in the oven, 240 degrees Fahrenheit, and leave it there for like 20 hours if you wanted to. I'm going to put it on low, and it is about 1 p.m. here, so I'm going to let it, because I don't want to leave the stove on overnight, I'm going to turn it off and put it in my fridge overnight. Bring it back out in the morning, and then bring it to, you know, to a boiling, put it down on low, and then I'm going to let it go for another, you know, whatever that would be. I want a full 24 hours at a low, very, very low simmer. So like right now it's boiling. So when I get it down to a simmer, I'll show you that's what I want it at. So you can just stop the cooking at any time and put it in your fridge and start up again. So because, you know, obviously these bones are cooked and it's really not a big deal. So I'm going to turn this down. You can see here, I'm going to turn my thing down to low, maybe like 2, because it's a big pot. So we're just going to turn that down. This will stop simmering, and I'll pull all that foam off. And we're just going to let it sit for a total of 20 to 24 hours. So again, you can break that cooking time up if you need to, you know, go to bed at night and not have this thing on the stove. Or like I said, you can put it in a 240 degree Fahrenheit oven, covered of course, and let it go for 20 hours there. Those are your options. All right, you guys, here we go. Okay, so we have cooked our broth. So this is my sweet bone broth that was done in the Instant Pot. I let it cook, then I let it just naturally release. So I just let it cool down for like another 24 hours. You don't have to, you can just let it naturally release for maybe a couple of hours, and then you actually just want to undo the lid and let it cool down. Same thing here. I've got my savory broth that I cooked that half a day. Then I turned off the stove. I put it in the fridge, brought it out the next day, and I continued to cook it for another 12 hours so that it got the full 24 hours on the stove. And then I've just let it cool down for a day. So now we are ready to strain these. So before we strain them, we want to be thinking about the containers that you're going to put them in and how you're going to use them. So if you're going to use them right away, I store, because I know I'm going to use my sweet bone broth every day in my greens latte, I store them in these glass pitchers, and these are from IKEA. You'll notice a theme in my world. There's a lot of IKEA. At any rate, so I store them in here, and they just go in my fridge, and I will use this up in probably 7 to 10 days, depending on how many of the green lattes I make for myself and how many my son will have as well. So that's those. And then for the broth that I'm going to use for soups, I have a few options that I use. I always like to use one of these ice cube containers. They actually make special, I think they're called soupers or something like that. These are silicone molds, and they have them at specific measurements. So these are all about a half a cup each. So I know that when I freeze some broth in here and I have a cube in the fridge and a recipe is calling for a cup of broth, I would take 2 cubes out. If it need a quarter cup, well, I'll just take 1 and then, you know, pour off the rest. But then, you know, if I'm going to make soup pretty soon, then I might just store it in a small container in the fridge. But if I don't know what I'm going to do with it and I just want to save it for later, which I'm going to do with a lot of this, I would just put it in one of these containers and in the freezer. Hot tip that I've learned the hard way, for some reason, the broth, maybe just water in general, does not want to freeze in a tall container. I used to always try to put it in one of these like this type of container, and these tall containers, for some reason, when it freezes, I mean, we all know things expand when they freeze, but it doesn't seem to want to expand up. It'll expand up, but it expands out as well. And so these were cracking and breaking. But these containers that tend to be a little bit more wide and shallow do better. And don't ask me why, but it seems to work a lot better. So that is how I freeze the broth. Okay, so join me over at the sink and I'll show you. Actually, you know what? Let's talk a little bit about how we're going to strain them. So I usually use this kind of thing to strain off, what do you call this? A colander, to strain off the bones. Pour it in this bowl. And then when I go to pour it in, there are various containers, I'm going to use this strainer just to take, you know, catch the littler things. Now these aren't perfectly clear broths. Again, not a Michelin star restaurant, but you know, if we were really trying to be like, you know, 5-star cooking, we might really strain off all the bits, but I don't mind some of the bits in there. So you'll see at the sink how I do this. And again, you're welcome to come up with your own way of doing this. And by all means, I'm open to your suggestions. This is just how I've been doing it and what I've worked out in my kitchen. All right, you guys, let's strain. Okay, so here is a sweet bone broth, and you can see when it cooled, it's now got quite a bit of fat along the top. So you can strain, you know, you can scrape some of that up and use it. I always have high hopes of using it, like, you know, when I would saute up some vegetables or things, but you know, and I would put it in my fridge, and then, you know what, I never used it. So I am just going to strain it off and throw it out. But you could, you know, in theory, you know, strain this, the fats, you know, kind of like melt it down and strain off any bits that are in the fat and then use it like to saute vegetables or something like that. It would have a lovely, lovely flavor, and it is healthy. But I've just found I end up never using it. So I'm just going to scrape it off, and then we are going to strain the broth. Okay, so just going to, you know, pull this off, throw it out. So I will put it in a little container so I can throw it out. Actually, yeah, I don't want it going down my sink. So I'm going to put it in a little container, and then we're going to throw it out. So again, perfectly healthy fats, and totally, you know, would be something really yummy to use in some kind of interesting saute. But I don't know, I have yet to come up with a way to use it. So I'm just gonna throw it out. And I think the rest, I just don't want that going down my sink. So, kind of see how this goes here. Now, what I'm going to do is pick these bones out, and I'm going to show you, there is this yummy marrow in there, and I'm going to cut that out because that is like really healthy for you, and it's really good. I encourage you to try that. I know that there's another dish where you just cook the marrow in the oven. I haven't ever tried that, but this is just, it's really spicy, and it's absolutely delicious. So I really look forward to just kind of snacking on it. I think that's probably some too, but anyway, you can just lift this out. You can see all the other stuff. And then I just take this out to the trash. I'd imagine you could maybe put it in a compost pile. I don't know though, with the chicken feed in there, I'm not sure you can. Anyway, yeah, so I usually just discard this in my trash, like in a plastic bag in my trash. So, and then the next step, not enough room. I need one of those big farm sinks, huh? Okay. But always good to do these things in places where you can just rinse stuff off and the mess will be in the sink. So we are going to do this. Whoa. Okay, that's one, and it's going to overflow. Darn it. Well, and we'll do the other one. So there is that. And then two. So this will make what, 1.5 probably. If I didn't spill so much, maybe it would make 2 full, but anyway. Never said I was perfect, certainly did not. So we're gonna do the same thing with the other, but I'm gonna put it in the other container. So you can kind of just see the general idea of how this happens. And again, okay, now we're gonna strain the other one. Let's see. Same thing. Okay, so again, this is all just gonna go in the garbage or a compost. Again, I'm not sure, I haven't composted in so long, I don't remember. Can you put bones in compost? If you can, then I suppose that's what you could do with that. But otherwise, we're just gonna strain it into these containers. And I know, like I said, I know I want a little bit for some soup. So, some of you had asked for some vegetarian recipes, so I thought I would make some veggie soup. This is going to be quite the... There we go. So that's 1. 2, probably gonna need a few containers. Made a lot more broth than I'm used to. Anyway, here we go. But you get the idea. We're just gonna strain it into containers. Okay, and that little bit extra is gonna go in the red here. Just going to use this. I don't know if you can see this, but so these won't be perfectly strained. There'll still be bits in them, but if I'm using them to make soups, I don't know. I don't worry too much about everything being perfectly strained because I feel like maybe there's something healthy in those little bits. So that's what I do. So you get the idea. Come up with a bunch of different containers, freeze it off to make some soups. They're great for gravy. Broth is just great to drink on its own. Savory broth, if you can drink that. I don't know. I don't seem to like it. Maybe in the evening, broth on its own, or if I'm fasting, I'll do something like this on its own, savory. But just have to pull that. And the rest I think I'm just going to throw out. It's just not worth faffing about with. So that's how we strain them. All right, so we have got our, let's see, this is our sweet bone broth, which is going to go in the fridge. This is my savory broth, which is going to go some in the fridge, some in the freezer. This is in the freezer fridge. And I will make a video with soup. We'll go over the structure of soup and so how you can make soup without recipes, how we can start kind of putting our own fun things together there. But right now I want to talk about the last little bit. So if you use the cow bones like that I had bought, they have some bone marrow in here. And this bone marrow is full of glucosamine. That's a supplement, obviously it's a compound, but it's a supplement people take for osteoarthritis and inflammation in their joints. It's also full of collagen and glycine. And I think we talked about glycine before. It's very helpful in making, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting the name of it, glutathione. So this looks like kind of came out. So the texture of bone marrow is kind of weird. It's kind of like, I don't know, a cross between fat and meat, but I know I'm not selling it because that doesn't sound very good. However, it is really, really good. Highly encourage you to try it. I like it warm more so than cold. This is already cold, so what I would do is probably just gently warm this in the oven. I would probably put it on like 180-degree oven and wait until it warms up. So it just pops right out, and it's just yummy to nosh on its own, but I suppose you could put it over some crackers or some bread. So I know it looks absolutely disgusting, but this is the one piece of a fall that I encourage you to try first. It's really, really good. So certainly better than liver. I have made peace that I will never like liver unless you guys have a recipe that you think is great. By all means, send it to me, but I have not found anything with liver that I like. So, but I will eat bone marrow, and it is really good. And I don't know if I just crave the nutrients that are in there. Maybe I need the glucosamine. I don't know. But so yeah, I would just heat this up in the oven, and I actually just would eat it. But you could put it like, because it's kind of spreadable. You can kind of see it spreads, so you can put it over some crackers or something like that. So that concludes our bone broth episode, and I promise I will do one on the greens latte. I'm trying to come up with maybe like a hot chocolate or something you could make with this as well. So give me a moment and we will get that video out as well, or I will get that video out as soon as possible. Thanks for hanging out with me today and making some bone broth. Let me know how yours goes. All right.